Penn State falls in the Big Ten championship game to Oregon in an absolute thriller, 45-37. With the loss, the Nittany Lions will now host SMU in the first round of the college football playoff in what will be a noon whiteout. We break down the game and the playoff bracket. Nittany Nation Overtime is next.
What I'm doing, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, you know what it is. We doing it big. Look up, there is no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch.
Welcome into a special postseason edition of Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Ryan Risky. I'm joined by Riley Holsinger, Neil Rudel, and former Penn State wide receiver Joe Nastasi. And guys, Penn State falls in the Big Ten championship game. However, they do make the college football playoff for the first time. We'll get to the game. However, I think right now the big news of the day is the bracket. Penn State is the 6th seed. They're hosting SMU in the first round.
Yeah, and Mark Brennan is still traveling, but hey, you know, and a lot to unpack here. To me, the bracket is about the best case scenario that they could have expected. Sure. I mean, you're going to get SMU, which is kind of new to the party. If you're fortunate, you're a touchdown favorite already. If you're fortunate to win that game, you get Boise State, which is another blue blood type game.
Tempe.
And
yeah.
So you really are going to be favored to advance to the national semifinals. And you're coming off a game where, even though you lost it, you once again have proven to yourself and everybody else that you have the potential and the capability to stand toe-to-toe with the best of the best. You haven't shown you can beat them yet, but you've shown you can play with them.
Oh yeah, we're close. I mean, and I'm not into the moral victory type thing, but that game was a really good game. I mean, I think we showed, not only proved to ourselves, but everyone else, that we're as good as anybody in the country. I mean, we're just coming up just a little bit short. And I know it sounds like that's always our song, but again, like what you were talking about, we're right there. And I mean, we played really, really well. I know not everybody's going to agree with me, but you watch that game and you cut it up. Those guys are really good. I mean, we got into a little bit more of a shootout early, which I think hurt us, because then we had to play catch up and faster football. But man, we ran the ball at will. We pushed them around. I thought that was Penn State offense. I was excited about it. So I'm excited about the bracket. I like where we're set up. It looked like we were going to have a favorable matchup whenever you kind of looked at where we were positioned going into that game. The only thing I was concerned about was bad loss. Where was that going to put us? And other than that, I said, hey, we're going to play with house money here.
Yeah, this is the best case scenario, I think, for Penn State. Despite obviously getting the bye, I think that would have been a great advantage, especially with how long the season pretty much is now. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you make it to the national championship game, you're playing a 17-game season. That's pretty much like an NFL regular season right there. But being able to play SMU in the first round, I don't think you could beat it. They are a good team. Brashard Smith has, I think, 1,300 rushing yards on the year. Kevin Jennings has proven he could be a good quarterback with 3,000 passing yards as well.
Well, the committee showed respect for the ACC. Yeah. I was surprised that Clemson, when they announced that they were 12th, I thought Alabama was going to be 11th and SMU was going to be out, because they did have 2 losses, even though one of them was in the championship game.
I thought they were going to go with Brand. I really did. I thought Big Brand's going to win out here. That was my take early. I just thought that the SEC, Bama, they were going to go with the money. But I think for us, I like it better going against SMU. I mean, it's going to be what it is. Penn State can play with anybody. I really feel that way. And let's just ride this thing out, see where we go.
And I think overall, I think the committee did a great job. Not everyone's going to be happy. As Neil, you said you thought the Bama bias would get them in. It didn't. And again, it shows, they had 2 bad losses on their resume. And SMU, they lost a close one to Clemson. And I'm still, the only, question I have, with the selection committee is, why is Clemson behind SMU after you beat them yesterday?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's hard to explain, because Nick Saban has really been advocating a lot, because you're going to hear a lot about strength of schedule, particularly going forward, because this is a whole new thing, and there hasn't been a lot of necessarily criteria that has been outlined. And so going forward, you're going to see how teams are going to schedule and how the fans are going to react to that.
Yeah, strength of schedule. I mean, I agree with that because it's going to keep people from wanting to play those marquee matchups outside of their conferences. You know, Penn State will play enough good teams inside the Big Ten. The SEC will do the same thing. So the cross-conference games are going to get, less. We're going to get less West Virginia, Penn States, and, teams that potentially can beat you outside of your conference. There's no reason to even play them.
And I know there's a lot of people upset right now with the way the bracket did play out. Oregon's going to get the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee in their bowl game. And, honestly, that's just the way the bracket played out. When these conferences negotiated this television rights deal, it was negotiated the top 4 ranked conference winners are going to get a bye. Now, when that happened, I don't think anybody ever thought that Arizona State and Boise State were going to be getting the 3 and the 4 seats, and that's why the bracket played out the way that it did.
Well, the SEC has been kind of cannibalizing itself. And, you look at the strength of the Big Ten as well. People were complaining about Indiana, saying, hey, Indiana didn't have a quality win. It's not Indiana's fault that Michigan has been down. Nobody ever complained about Indiana before when they didn't have to play, a Penn State. They played Ohio State and Michigan, and they got there.
Yeah, I mean, look. The Big Ten was similar to the SEC. I mean, I understand you have all those big brands down there and they're knocking each other off, and it is what it is. But I think that they really did get it right. The only thing that I wasn't sure is exactly what you said with the Clemson SMU. But other than that, I think the bracket is set up exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Well, it's an exciting time for college football with year 1 of the college football playoff. There's definitely more to dissect, but right now we have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will break down the Big Ten championship game.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. Ryan Risky, Riley Holsinger, Neil Rudel, and former Penn State wide receiver Joe Nastasi. And guys, unfortunately, Penn State did come up short in the Big Ten championship game, except honestly, I thought they played really well. They proved that they can play toe-to-toe with the best in the nation.
Yeah.
They had some self-inflicted troubles that you got to give Oregon credit for causing. Oregon really looked good. I mean, their speed.
Sure.
Joe, you comment on that. I mean, they just got guys in open spaces. Penn State's defense, I think, was a little shocked by that. I don't know they had quite seen a passing game like Oregon was able to throw out there, and I think it created an uphill struggle for Penn State. But Penn State kept answering, showed a ton of resiliency, a ton of character, but they still, in the end, dug themselves a hole that it's hard to get out of that against the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, it's hard to win a football game whenever you're asking your offense to score 45-plus points in a game. I don't think James Franklin wanted it to be the case, but I think there was some encouragement to see from that Penn State offense by still sticking in the game. They could have easily thrown in the towel whenever it was 28-10 early on.
Yeah, I mean, they had, if you look at it, that number 15, he was really slippy. They had the splash plays is what kind of hurt us. Like, we were defending the inside the 20s, we were okay, but when we got in the middle of the field, those splash plays, and they were hitting 15, that was tough. Run game hurt us in a sense that we were struggling in space with those guys. If we could have slowed the run game down, would have been able to get another guy outside of the box, would have made it better in that pass game, but we had to keep bringing guys down because we were struggling stopping the run.
And I think one thing, you saw why Oregon's so dangerous. They throw a lot of short passes, except they have explosive playmakers. They're very elusive, and they're tough to break down. You saw guys kept trying to take angles.
Sure.
And I thought overall Penn State did a good job trying to tackle these guys. It's just, they were getting too many yards, so that was creating short yardage situations, whether it's 3rd and short. So, I mean, nobody's been able to stop them this year.
That quarterback, though, made them go completely. Like, his mobility made them go. Very seasoned, very good, took care of the football, didn't make any mistakes. I mean, if you watch that Oregon game, give them a couple of mistakes, and we would win that football game. Like you said, we had self-inflicted wounds there. We had those penalties. They were holding us all night long. I mean, we needed 1 or 2 of those, and we're okay. Just a couple of things that go our way, and we win that football game. I don't think we're that far off.
Yeah, Oregon played a perfect game. No turnovers. 3 penalties. But, Penn State, once again, left you wanting a little bit in terms of They're right there. They're coming back from double-digit leads. I thought they got away from the run a little bit too much. They ran for 290 yards, and then at the end of the game,
gouging them.
They still had time, 2nd and 1, and they're throwing deep. I have no idea why Kotelnicki would want to do that. And I think in the 2 biggest moments this year, frustrating, down at the goal line against Ohio State, and there when you had a chance to tie this game, they throw deep on to a guy that really wasn't even open.
Yeah. I mean, I get why they did it on 2nd and 1. I know we have this conversation. We can always go back and question that. We did, like, what I was really proud of is answering the bell. I mean, we answered the bell. This is a really good football team we have. I mean, we're really tough. We're coached that way. I know not everyone's going to agree with that, but like just the way we answered, the way we had resiliency. I mean, I can't say enough about it. It doesn't feel like it, but like you said, 45 points. We had guys in space there. Probably didn't play our best game in the back end, but other than that, what else are you going to say about our Penn State team? This, what we didn't do well. I mean, yeah, let's make the extra point.
Well, there's some loss of poise on penalties. I mean, you racked up four
personal fouls, and
fouls,
one of which was on a touchback. I mean,
that's unheard of.
Yeah, I watch it. It was just, I saw the same kind of stuff the other way. Maybe I'm being a little too biased, but man, some of that stuff was touchy, man. I don't know. I just thought it was a real lopsided officiated game. That's just, maybe Oregon's that perfect. I don't know.
And then another one that hurt was, the face mask on the 4th and 1 when you get the stop. And James said after the game, those just happen. It's unfortunate you get the stop and then you get called for the face mask.
Yeah, they were correct.
Yeah,
they were correct. It just, we stuffed them too. It happens. I mean, I get it. That happens.
He was more upset with the unsportsmanlike penalties than he was the face mask penalties.
Yeah, when the guy
felt like in the line of fire that it's going to happen in a face mask occasionally. He lived with that. He was upset more with the other couple penalties.
Yeah, because he just pushed his head down.
Special teams hurt them a little bit. Hey, when you want to measure against number 1, you realize, I mean, they could have been number 1 sitting here today. This would have been his 100th win at Penn State.
No doubt.
There was so much to gain, and they were right there.
Yeah.
But you can't leave those to chance.
You're right.
Exactly. And there's so much to nitpick in these games, but whenever you're playing the number 1 team in the country, I mean, you almost have to play a perfect game out there. You can't have these penalties left and right like unsportsmanlike conduct.
Right, to create some turnovers or force them into some tougher situations. Not force them into, but they didn't. They played, like you said, a very clean game. They were ready to play. We were too, though. Look, you can't sit there and say Penn State wasn't ready to come out and play. We were ready to play football. That team was really good. Their RPO game was really, really good. That quarterback did a great job. And we ran the ball for what, you say, 290?
290.
I mean, look, that looked like Penn State
9 yards
football.
a carry. That's what makes me mad about the second and 1.
I got you, yeah.
I mean, because you're trying to bleed the clock at that point.
Sure.
You don't want to give them the ball back. You have 2 timeouts. You had everything at your disposal. You're in midfield.
Yeah.
I don't know where the fire was.
And Fat Man was running well too, man. I tell you what, that was the quickest I've seen him all year.
Yeah, he looked great.
He looked really good.
This might be probably the best that we've seen Nick Singleton and Katron Allen just run together as a duo. I mean, over 200 yards, 100 yards for both of those guys each.
Right.
I mean, definitely a lot to break down. Anyways, we have to take another break. When we come back, we're going to continue breaking down the Big Ten championship game. Don't go anywhere.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. Ryan Risky, Riley Holsinger, Neil Rudel, and former Penn State wide receiver Joe Nastasi. And guys, unfortunately, one thing that comes out is you played toe-to-toe with the number 1 team in the nation, except James Franklin's record against top 5 teams goes to 1-14. However, I don't think you can just blame this game solely on James. I mean, like, Penn State was right there with them. As we said, a couple calls go their way or a couple breaks go their way. It's a different story.
How about this? How about we give them credit for being there? Can someone do that? I mean,
They should. Nobody had them penciled into the Big Ten championship.
But my point is, and I know everybody likes to jump on this situation about the record, but we're in these positions, and there's reasons we're in these positions, and there's coordinators, and there's coaches, and there's effort. There's recruiting. There's so much to that. It's hard for me to sit there and never say, well, he's only this against them. yeah, we see the stat, but we're there. I mean, could you imagine being Florida State this year? What would we be talking about?
Right, and I think that's fair. I think so the appreciation for James is going up. I mean, you look at the body of work these last couple years. And, you talked about their offense. I personally felt the defense in this game kind of let more down than the offense. You can't expect to win when you give up 45 points. I know one was a pick six. My problem, at least at times, is in the biggest moments, there always seems to be some head-scratching calls that you didn't have to make. And, it didn't cost them this game. But I wondered, did anybody else have a problem with going for two when you did?
I just didn't see what the point of it was in that situation.
Analytics, it seems like more and more it's moving towards that point late in games whenever you're down by 14 to go for two there. I understand it whenever to try and cut that lead to 6. That way you can kick that extra point for that go-ahead touchdown. But for me, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it. Yeah. I see it done, but I'm just not a huge fan.
I was talking about it before. I mean, they're obviously were much more effective as a vertical team. I thought that a tie, let's say we did get into overtime, would benefit Penn State based on a shrunk field. I mean, I would assume that we were doing that to do exactly that. Score, kick it, win the game. That's what I was thinking. But not getting it, now all of a sudden you're chasing points. So like if you get it, you're like, yeah, I get it, I understand. Now we're down 6, great. But the field goal, get it into overtime, I feel was just effective because I think we had just as good a shot in overtime, just based on our style versus their style.
Yeah, my problem is, you're chasing the whole game, showing all kinds of character.
Yeah, that's good.
Coming back, 3/4 of the building are wearing white. Penn State had a decided advantage.
And a huge shout out to the Penn State fans for making that trip down there when you really had very, very short notice to get down to Indy.
There's 14 minutes left, a ton of time. And, to me, if the momentum was on Penn State's side and they scored there, who's saying, hey, let's go for 2 here? This will be a good idea. No one. So it kind of sucks some of the air out of the situation. And then, then you're going to have to turn around, and they took the extra point after it was 45-30, take the extra point. But you still needed a touchdown and a 2-pointer just to tie.
Yeah.
So I didn't particularly obviously care for it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, the one thing, though, is they still had a chance to go down there and win the game with about 2 minutes left in that situation. But obviously with that 2nd and 1 play, it didn't result in that. And you could draw some question marks to that call as well.
Well, they got away from the run, I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, as we said, this is the best Singleton and Allen as a duo have looked since the very beginning of the year. And Riley, you've said maybe even the best they've looked all year. Like Singleton had a 40-yard rush on the first drive of the game.
Yeah, you just look at everything, the whole offense. Look at that offensive line.
Yeah.
Pushing guys all over the place. Ruschi played well. I mean, we had Dawkins play well. I was, just watching that as a player, just watching how they were playing. Warren played well. I thought Drew played well. I mean, he made a couple of he had his spurts. He tends to do that in some of these games. He missed some guys, and then those 2 were, pretty bad timing on the picks. But he missed a couple guys in a drive in there when we had to punt. But all in all, like that was a really good performance by our team. Oregon played flawless. We played really well, and that was the difference.
Yeah, kind of going back to the O-line, Oregon entered leading the Big Ten in sacks, and for the most part, Drew Aller was kept upright. He had time to throw. He wasn't under pressure. He wasn't under duress. So, huge shout out to the offensive line for keeping him upright and giving him time to throw.
Yeah, they got 1 sack. I thought on the other side, Penn State just didn't create enough chaos, fumble, turnover, interception. I mean, Gabriel did throw 32 times. I mean,
he bounced to him. Right? We knocked the one out, bounced straight to him.
Yeah.
So we did have a straight, and he was tough to get to. He climbed the pocket. He was quick. I thought we did a really good job with him, but again, they took care of the football. They took care of it.
That Gabriel fumble, if that lands in Penn State's hands, there's a good chance that's a huge turning point in that game right there. And we're talking about a different story.
I didn't think Drew had his best passing game, but I thought he really led them. I mean, he also ran for 54 tough yards.
Yeah, sure he did. Yeah.
He just was a little high at times.
Yeah.
He had Warren open. It could have been a touchdown.
Yeah. When we lined him up at tackle. That was a great play. We went on balance. He was at tackle. really had them confused. If you saw that, we went trips to the boundary. He was the tackle, but those three were off. We were unbalanced on the opposite side. We threw him right down it was tackle eligible is what it ended up being. It was a good call, really good call, and he missed him. That was a touchdown.
It's hard to game plan for everything that Andy Kotelnick
He does a good job.
You.
I thought Penn State was very ready to play. I just think it was what it was.
You know, we could complain about this and that, and we're going to. I mean, you know, this is a high-profile game, but they put up 37 points.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and
no,
a good
they
37.
played well enough to win. Just fell a little bit short against the number 1 team in the nation. Anyways, we have to take one more timeout. When we come back, we're going to crown our Nitwit of the Week. Did anybody win this week? We'll find out when we come back.
Don't miss a minute of Nittany Nation Overtime, now also on Apple and Spotify. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, Nitwit of the Week time. And ooh, nobody won this week. Ouch. We all picked Penn State, and by the rules, since Oregon won, there is no Nitwit of the Week, except I do want to point out that I'm still in first place. And again,
Wow.
Neil, remember, just keep looking closely because I had to shrink the size of the footballs next to my name.
We used to have a deflated ball. Joe, you make a good point about
Jeez.
Penn State getting in this game and what you think it'll do for them.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, some were looking at it like, well, we play an extra game and you get beat up and then you have to turn around and play in the playoffs. I think this is a momentum thing for Penn State, even on the loss. I think this is something that our guys look at ourselves and say, yes, we can compete with anybody, not only compete but beat anybody. We beat ourselves. They played perfect. So I think this is a momentum game going into the playoffs as opposed to something that while you lost the conference championship and you take a step back. I think it's exact opposite for Penn State right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And offensively, if they play that game against most of these teams in the college football playoff, I think they have a pretty good chance to beat any of those teams out there, too.
I think it's shown that everybody's beatable.
Sure.
That there wasn't maybe one super team, although Oregon looked the closest to that we've seen so far.
I would say Oregon offensively. I think probably Georgia probably has a better sound defense. So I think there's parts in different places. I think that Oregon, if you could keep running at them and we don't get into the shooting match, I hope we have another shot at them. That would mean we play them in a title game. I believe we could beat them.
Well, a lot to like, a lot to be excited for. That's all the time we have for this edition of Nittany Nation Overtime. We'll be back next week, even though Penn State isn't. So anyways, thank you for watching and have a great night.
Thanks for watching WTAJ's Nittany Nation Overtime.